Pinewood Motel met its end in April of 2007, after authorities found more than 200 videotapes of murders in the establishment. The earliest of them dates back almost 3 years ago, the motel's first ever documented murder. A newlywed couple drives along the highway of a remote area. Due to a sudden urge, they are forced to park by the side of the road. As they go on with their business, a man suddenly peeks through the window, startling the couple. The man tells them to get off his property and do it somewhere else, terrified of the man and the gun in his hands. The couple drives away in fear and parks in Meadowview Inn to rest for the night before they head back home. The hotel manager, Gordon, with his assistant, Reese, greets the groom and gladly offers him a room. Unaware that the inn has a dark secret, the groom hurries outside with a big smile on his face. There are cameras set up in the rooms to secretly film couples engaging in. Those tapes will then be posted online for sale. While the couple enjoys their time at the motel, the staff watches them on the monitors through the cameras set up in their room. When Reese gets up, the lights in the room go out, forcing the couple to stop. The groom tries to figure out what's happening, but the lights start to blink. The bride insists they head back to the car in fear, but the groom wants to continue. In the staff room, Gordon and Reese watch them until it's time for the couple to go. As soon as the couple drives off, another car arrives. It's a man who introduces himself as Smith and a woman he brought with him. After paying for the stay and getting the key, Smith drives to the room and the staff begin their usual work, monitoring their new victims. From the monitor, they can see and hear Smith preparing a plastic cover for the mattress and telling the woman to lie face down. Smith then climbs up on the bed and proceeds to stab her with a knife. Gordon and Reese are taken aback by the gruesome sight. Reese even stands up, trying to comprehend what he is seeing. In the hotel room, Smith takes a deep breath and sighs in relief, as if successfully fulfilling one of his desires. He then starts undressing and dumping his blood-covered clothing over the body of the woman before rolling the plastic. After taking a shower to remove all the traces of blood, Smith prepares to leave. However, as soon as he opens the door, Gordon and Reese greet him at the doorstep and knock him out with a gun. Later, the videotape dealer arrives at the motel and demands they lower the volume of the copies, since sales these days are slow. He explains that the videotapes are all the same, and people are not interested anymore. Gordon tries to convince him, but the dealer insists. As the dealer gets up to leave, he notices traces of blood on the stock of the rifle and asks if there's a problem going on in the inn. Gordon assures him that it's nothing, but he ends up showing the tape of the murder. The dealer asks if it's real and asks to know where Smith is. They bring him to a room where Smith is tied up to a chair. When asked if he knows the woman, Smith denies it and says that she must have ended her. However, his lies are useless. They got everything on video. Reese asks if they should call the police, but the dealer insists there is a high risk of exposing their operations. He then suggests they finish him off instead, to which everyone agrees. But before they leave, Smith proposes a partnership. He offers to put his skill to use. He notes that their current setup can bring tons of money. Due to the lower sales of erotica, people these days want more than that, watching someone else get. They could easily sell 10,000 copies of a single video. Gordon is hesitant, but the dealer explains that Smith is right. There is a market for it. Smith demands an equal share of their earnings. Otherwise, he is willing to get buried with the woman in the back. Gordon takes a moment to talk to the dealer, then unties Smith. Before they proceed, Gordon makes it clear that he will be the one running the operation, and if Smith decides to flip on them, the videotape will be sent to the police. To ensure their safety net, the dealer will keep another copy to keep Smith in their control. Smith agrees. Nothing is more interesting for him than doing what he does best while earning money. They decide to shut down for a few days to prepare for their new operation. The young couple, Jessica and Caleb, together with their friend Tanner, are driving to Jessica's hometown to introduce Caleb to her father. Caleb worries that her father won't like him, but Jessica assures him he's almost perfect and everything will turn out fine. Tanner suggests they find a place to rest for the night, to which the couple agrees. After a few-minute drive, they reach Meadowview Inn. Gordon greets them at the reception and explains the night rate for couple. Jessica tries to tell Gordon about Tanner, but Caleb cuts her off. While Caleb fills out the guest's form, Gordon presses a button under the table, which turns on the cameras and alerts everyone of their victim's arrival. After getting the key, Caleb and Jessica make their way back to the car, with Gordon telling them to just scream if they need something. Jessica then complains about having to share the room with Tanner. Caleb tells her it will just be a few hours. They prepare to drive to their room at the far end of the motel, but they realize that Tanner has gone out. Caleb decides to head to their room first and just let Tanner find them. The couple park just outside their room and grab their packs to prepare for the night. Caleb tries to contact Tanner, but their phones have no reception. Jessica comments that Tanner can find them anyways. The last thing they have to worry about is calling him. She then tells Caleb not to waste the little privacy they have. However, his mind is still occupied by his worries about their trip. Are they doing the right thing? To reassure him, Jessica promises they can always go back if he has a hard time adjusting to their new life with her family. Her words put Caleb's mind at ease, knowing that she's by his side. After sharing a passionate kiss, Caleb suddenly mentions what Gordon said earlier about them screaming for something. He finds it unusual for a man to say that. Jessica assures him again that screaming is the same thing as yelling, so he doesn't need to worry about it. She then turns off the lights and joins Caleb in bed. Unbeknownst to the couple, Gordon and Smith lurk just outside their room, ready to attack. However, before they can continue with their evil plan, there is a sudden thud on the door, followed by continuous knocking. Caleb and Jessica start to panic. The pounding momentarily stops and Caleb rushes to check if someone is outside their doorstep, but he sees no one. The pounding continues. It originates from another door adjoining their room. Caleb immediately tries to block their possible attacker from opening the door when he hears Tanner calling out to him. Turns out it's Tanner, who sneaked into the other room through an open window. Jessica decides to shower first before they get kicked out. Tanner then starts talking about what Caleb's life is going to be like when he starts living with Jessica's family, the kind of life they did not talk about having before. While Tanner preaches, Gordon and Reese watch and hear them through a monitor connected to several cameras in the room. Gordon mentions that Tanner messed up their plan when he started banging at the door the moment he and Smith were about to enter the room. They must put another set of cameras outside to ensure that it won't happen again. Gordon decides to hold off in the meantime, since another pawn has been added to their game. Meanwhile, Jessica has just finished showering, and as she walks out of the bathroom, Smith can be seen standing outside through the window. His face is covered with a cloth mask. Reese arrives and tells him that Gordon decided to hold off on their operation for that night. He explains that there are 3 of them staying in the room. Smith refuses to listen and insists on proceeding with their plan. As they argue, a car arrives. An old man and woman. Gordon rushes outside to greet them and explains that they currently have no available rooms due to remodeling maintenance. The man then points out to fix their vacancy time, to save people from wasting time trying to check in when they have no available rooms. Gordon apologizes and offers to call another hotel in the area to get them a room as an apology. While the man goes into the cabin with Gordon, Smith sneaks out of Reese's sight and walks toward the car where the old woman is waiting. He draws the knife, with the intent to finish off the woman. As he draws closer, Gordon sees him and proceeds to turn the no sign on and off to get Smith's attention. Smith obliges and retreats just as Gordon and the man walk outside the cabin. Gordon explains they will be reopening in 2 days and gives the man a promo for half the price in case they decide to check in again. After the car drives off, he turns his attention to Reese and Smith behind him. Reese explains he tried to tell Smith to call it off, but the latter insisted. Gordon lashes out at Smith and notes that it will be dangerous if one of the 3 manages to get away. Smith assures them there will be no survivors, but if Gordon is backing out, then he will back down. He walks away with a taunting grin on his face, leaving both the 2 anxious. After deciding to settle in for the night, Tanner returns to the other room and starts checking around. He grabs the remote and starts channel hopping until he reaches the camera feed from the other room where Caleb and Jessica can be seen enjoying an intimate moment. Tanner leans forward, trying to process what he's seeing. He storms into the other room, prompting Caleb and Jessica to stop. He says that they are being watched and shows Caleb the monitor. Caleb immediately checks for cameras and finds the ones the staff use. Gordon then tells Reese and Smith to go out there and stop them from getting out of the place. Before he goes, Smith takes a moment to savor the pleasure brought by how terrified Jessica looks. He then takes something to cover up his face and goes out with Reese. Back in the room, Caleb insists on confronting the staff, but it might be too dangerous for them to go out there. There might be a shotgun waiting for them. Even if they call the police and wait, Tanner believes that the inn is connected to them, and it could cause too much trouble, so they all agree to just leave. Caleb tries to start the car as soon as they get inside, to no avail. Their car has been rigged. As they argue over whether they left the car's lights running, a blinding light appears in front of them. Caleb steps out of the car, attempting to confront the driver of the other car, but it starts driving toward him. In a panic, Caleb returns inside and tells the others to get out through the other side of the car. However, another car appears, blocking their way and forcing them to remain inside. Tanner attempts to call the police, but he has no reception. All of a sudden, Gordon appears with a handheld camera and starts recording them, telling them to scream louder for him. He also mentions Caleb's name, then disappears. The next thing they know is Reese blowing up their tire with a gun. The trio rushes outside the car, while Reese continues shooting at them. They manage to enter the room and wait behind the bed for any possible attack. They try to catch their breath while trying to figure out what's happening. Jessica suspects that the staff is not planning on finishing them off at that time, and that there is something more they want to do with them. Just then, she also remembers that Gordon said Caleb's name, leading her to realize that the staff could hear them from the start. With no other choice but to run as far as possible, the trio decides to take their chances through the open window in the other room where Tanner sneaked in earlier. Caleb tells Tanner to go first, but he hesitates, scared of getting ambushed. He agrees nonetheless, and successfully makes his way out. Jessica follows. However, when it's time for Caleb's turn, Smith and Reese enter the room and pull him back. Caleb then tells them to run and save themselves, but Jessica refuses and attempts to go inside to save her boyfriend. Tanner grabs her and takes her to the other side, where they can see Caleb unconscious, tied up to a chair. When Caleb regains consciousness, he realizes that he's been caught and yells for Jessica while trying to break free. Smith knocks him unconscious again. Outside, Jessica keeps banging on the window, and Tanner tells her to continue as he tries to open the door. Just then, Smith stabs Caleb and continues multiple times while Jessica watches in horror. She rushes to the door to help Tanner, but Reese manages to hold them off. Tanner takes a quick peek at the window and sees Caleb lifeless. They try entering the room through the adjacent door, but Gordon appears with a camera, forcing the two to flee. Tanner and Jessica run for their lives into the woods, while Reese grabs the camera and chases them with Smith. Jessica insists on going back for Caleb, but Tanner tries to calm her down. They need to get to the police. When they sense their pursuer approaching, the two try to hide behind a fallen tree and wait until the coast is clear. After Smith passes by them, they start running again. All of a sudden, Reese appears in front of them and attacks Tanner, who gets knocked to the ground. Reese goes over to him and attempts to stab him while recording. Jessica rushes to Tanner's aid and strikes Reese's head, allowing them the chance to escape. As soon as Reese wakes up, Smith and Gordon arrive, demanding he know where their victims have gone. Gordon lashes out at Smith, saying they should have waited, but Smith finds pleasure in chasing his victim, so he insists he and Reese will follow Tanner and Jessica while Gordon takes the road. Gordon reluctantly agrees. Meanwhile, Tanner suggests they hide and wait until daylight, but Jessica refuses. She cannot leave Caleb. She wants to go back, but deep inside, she knows Caleb is gone, and that's what Tanner urges her to realize. When she finally calms down, they decide to continue. Not long after, they come across a lone cabin in the woods and frantically knock on its door. An old couple answers the door. As they panic in fear of getting caught, they manage to explain the situation, but the couple is reluctant. For all they know, they are actually robbers who were trying to gain their sympathy. A few pleas after, and the couple agrees to call the police while they anxiously wait outside hiding beside the porch. Minutes later, the lady tells them to come in despite her husband's objection. She takes them to the kitchen while they wait for the sheriff. Then the lady asks what brought them there. Jessica explains they are on their way to her hometown. Just then, they hear someone coming. The lady assures them it's the sheriff, and tells her husband to bring the sheriff inside the house. However, it turns out that the man called Gordon instead of the police. Tanner and Jessica start to get hysterical, trying to convince the couple that those are the men who are hunting them down. The lady hesitates, but Gordon tries to manipulate her into thinking that Tanner and Jessica work for him. The man also explains that he trusts Gordon more than the two strangers he just met. The lady then says she doesn't know Smith, so she orders her husband to call the police to settle everything once and for all. Gordon tries to trick them and says how much he appreciates their help, but they will be the ones to take Tanner and Jessica to the police instead. All of a sudden, Smith shoots the man, along with the lady, taking everyone in shock. He has lost his patience and insists on getting on with their business. Jessica realizes that Smith shot twice, meaning he has no bullets remaining in his shotgun. This prompts them to run out of the kitchen. A chase ensues. Gordon catches Tanner before he and Jessica can run up the stairs, leaving Jessica trying to flee by herself. She reaches the second floor, but Gordon grabs her feet from the gap of the railings and tries to pull her back. As she tries to break free, Tanner, who managed to recover in time, tackles Gordon down the stairs. Together with Jessica, they continue to find a way to escape, while Smith arrives with a reloaded shotgun. Just as Smith steps near the hallway, they manage to open a bedroom door where they frantically try to find a phone to contact the police. Jessica finds nothing. Tanner blocks the door with cabinets, and Jessica finds an open window. Near the garage, she sees a car parked. Tanner immediately goes to check with her, just before Smith fires at the door. They make it out of the bedroom while Smith tries to open the door through the hole. As their only choice to survive, Tanner and Jessica jump from the roof and run for their lives toward the car. However, they discover that the tires have been rigged by their pursuers, prompting Tanner to let out a frustrated swear. All of a sudden, Reese appears and knocks Tanner down, while he pins Jessica down to the ground with his foot. After informing the others that he caught them, Smith and Gordon arrive. Smith orders Gordon to start filming, which the latter immediately does. Gordon focuses the camera on the unconscious Tanner and pans it to Jessica, who can be seen begging for them to stop. Smith insists on finishing them off. He asks Gordon to make the murder scene inside the house look like a failed burglary, since the old couple in the house unexpectedly got involved. They were outside of their plans, or even having to deal with 3 victims at once. Smith grabs the camera from Gordon and orders him and Reese to go back to the house to tamper with the evidence that might link them to the murder. Despite showing a hint of reluctance, Gordon and Reese oblige. They make their way back while Smith stays to guard their victims. He starts filming Jessica, commenting on how hard it is to make a living off filming people getting. As he inches closer, Jessica starts to feel her chest tighten, eventually causing her to have a hard time breathing. After trashing the house, Gordon and Reese return to get Jessica and Tanner back to the inn. Jessica later wakes up and finds herself tied up to the same chair where Caleb breathed his last. His shoe lies on the floor just beside her. She starts to scream, despite knowing that no one can save her, trying to break free. In the office, Smith asks them to continue their job, but Reese refuses. Gordon tells him to do it alone, since they barely did anything. Smith gladly agrees, and steps out of the office, grinning. After he leaves, Reese confides that he's not liking what they are doing anymore. Unsure about what they should do, he asks Gordon, who right now is also starting to hesitate. Meanwhile, before he reaches the room, Smith senses something and returns to the office, where he finds Gordon and Reese talking about something. Unbeknownst to Smith, his allies plan to betray him. However, the instinct in him tells him to be careful, so he snatches the other shotgun from Gordon and heads outside again. Smith reaches the room and places the shotgun near the wall before cutting a telephone cord. He plans to take a different approach this time, instead of using his knife. Then he leans over to Jessica and caresses her face. While adjusting the camera, he recounts his encounter with his previous victim. After removing the gag, Jessica stabs him, allowing her the chance to escape. Gordon sends in Reese when they see what happened from the monitors. Outside, Jessica sees Reese approaching, and she manages to hide in the basement before he reaches the cabin. After partially recovering, Smith goes outside with Reese to find Jessica. Gordon also arrives, and they decide to split up. Meanwhile, Jessica slowly crawls backward, afraid to make any noise. However, she gets pricked in the head by a protruding nail. She looks up and sees more of them in the same area. To avoid them, she rolls to the side, but ends up beside the rotting girl. She immediately covers her mouth to avoid any noise from escaping her lips. As she makes her way out, she comes across Caleb's body and tries to wake him up, hoping that he's still alive. All of a sudden, a hand grabs her foot. It's Tanner, whose mouth is overflowing with blood, but somehow is still alive. She crawls toward him and tells him to be quiet. Just then, Reese decides to enter the basement, suspecting that Jessica is hiding there. However, he finds no one but the corpses of their victims and the barely breathing Tanner. He approaches Tanner and prepares to slit his, but he senses a sudden movement behind him. When he turns around to check, Jessica pushes him toward the nails using Caleb's body, which eventually pierce him. She tries taking Tanner with her, but it's too late. She then grabs the shotgun and makes her way out, avoiding getting caught by Smith on the way. Despite her ragged breathing and panic, she manages to evade her pursuer, but Gordon catches a glimpse of her head behind a car. As Gordon approaches, she silently makes her way into the pond. Gordon believes she's hiding under the water, so he grabs a stick and carefully examines the surface. When he finally sees something suspicious, he pulls out his knife and grabs what he thinks is Jessica. He turns around after seeing that it's only a piece of ragged clothing. Unbeknownst to him, Jessica is behind him, hiding underwater. She slowly raises the shotgun and proceeds to shoot Gordon right in his chest, causing an instant demise. Meanwhile, Smith hears the gunshot and sees Gordon's body floating in the pond. He calls out to Reese, unaware that he's the only one alive. When he looks around, he sees Jessica's footsteps on the ground and follows them. Jessica is inside the trailer. After hearing Smith walk away, she gradually opens the door and inspects the surroundings. She lets out a sigh of relief when she sees nothing outside. However, Smith finds her and starts attacking with a knife. She tries to fight back using everything she can grab beside her, but Smith overpowers her. After a brief struggle, she spots a gas container nearby and splashes it on Smith's face. He groans in pain as the gas temporarily irritates his eyes. Jessica then forcing him to run for the pond while screaming in pain. She then makes her way out of the inn and comes across a passing vehicle. She survived. Later, the police are called to the inn with Jessica. However, they find nothing. No cameras, no bodies either. Elsewhere, the dealer watches the footage of in a new office with Smith. As it turns out, he survived and is now manning a new establishment, the Pinewood Motel, where the police would later find more than 200 videotapes of documented murders.